My name is Tall Oak in the language of our people in southern New England, the Wampanoag and the Mashantucket Pequot tribes. It's Kanockus Pagodamisk, and our people are the people who met the Pilgrims, the people in New England, most specifically the Wampanoag tribe. And the name Wampanoag means the people of the East, or the people of the first light. And the Pequots were divided after the arrival of the English into two groups which continue to maintain that separation, although we originated as one people. And that's the Eastern Pequots, or Pawcatuck Pequots, and the Mashantucket, or Western Pequots. And that's the group that my family comes down from, the Western or Mashantucket Pequots. The Mohegans were also part of the Pequot nation originally. Shortly before the arrival of the English, there was a disagreement between the Mohegan faction and the Pequot, and the Mohegan branched off into a separate tribe, which remains separate to this day as well. And this process of splintering off because of disagreements is something that we all have to learn the lessons from, because history is a great teacher. What we come to realize when we meet together like this is that the story of one tribe is the story of them all. So we have that common bond, that common experience. And I think this is what people in this society need to understand more than anything else if they're going to develop any sensitivity to our people and the issues that surround our interaction with them through the years. And that is that the Native American experience, the European American experience, the African American experience, the Asian American experience on this continent have all been distinctly different. And we are the result of those experiences. This is where our perceptions and all of our concepts come from. And as long as that remains true, the basic issues of injustice will continue to exist, because this is what they are born out of. So if people in this society that really have a desire to make changes that are mandatory to our common survival, not an option, mandatory to our common survival, they have to develop that understanding of those differences and experiences. A value system based on things is self-destructive. So that's why you see all the self-destruction that has taken place in the past 500 years, because everything revolved around that almighty dollar. Columbus supposedly came here for God, gold, and glory, but not necessarily in that order. And we've all seen the results of that. We still suffer from that legacy, the legacy that we as Native people are born into. So we have to help people to understand that if their privileges that they enjoy today have been bought with our blood and our suffering, then those privileges are misplaced. Those privileges shouldn't be there, because our Constitution here in this land says all men are created equal. But those are just words, unless people can develop the understanding I'm talking about. And this is what I have tried to do with most of my life when I go out to speak to different groups. But the other thing that is so powerful about being here is the exchange of prophecies from all of the indigenous people of each area. And because our people in southern New England were the first to meet the English, we were the people who met the Pilgrims, people of the first light. We call them the Awanuksak, or the strangers, because we knew who we were, and we knew we were Ninuag, or the human beings. That was the name we had for ourselves. So often people ask, what did you call yourself before Columbus called you Indians? And that's the answer I always give them. We were Ninuag, or the human beings. But these strangers, these Wanuksak that came here, we didn't know who they were, and that's why we gave them that name, Wanuksak, the strangers. And when they came, of course, they came supposedly, according to what we've all been taught, for freedom from persecution, freedom of religion, freedom from oppression, freedom from bigotry, and all of those things. But if that was so, why do these things still exist? And added to that list, why do we have racism? That is a transplanted notion. We never had such a thing. Racism is based on an unfounded notion of European superiority. And we still live with that legacy, again, that is documented each evening on the evening news. And because of this attitude of intolerance, bigotry, racism, and all of those negative perceptions and ways to interact with our people, when those strangers came here, the first thing they did was try to dismantle every freedom that we had, in spite of the perception they tried to give that they had come here in search of freedom. So, in that process, our spiritual leaders, who were the keepers of our tradition, the keepers of our prophecy, were the prime targets for these strangers. So one by one, as these freedoms were dismantled that we always had from the Creator since He put us here in our land, these spiritual leaders were either discredited or killed or whatever to remove them from that sphere of influence that they enjoyed with our people, because the strangers saw that as a threat to their intended plans to exploit the people and the land that they found here. So because our people, our spiritual leaders, were the target of that kind of oppression, much of our prophecies and much of our traditional knowledge was lost very early on. We have over 375 years of this ongoing process behind us. But with my strong interest that I have, my passion for history, many things have come to me in that process. Many of the parts of the puzzle, many of the dots that need to be connected. And this is what I've spent most of my life doing, because it's all basically the same effort. It's consistent with our struggle for survival, and that's what I've dedicated my life to. So as part of that process, the Creator, understanding our need, has blessed me with the opportunity to meet people from various tribes who were strong spiritual leaders, people who had retained what had been taken away from us. And with that process, I have been able to reconstruct as well as I could what our prophecies may have been, or at least what was consistent with our prophecies and our teachings. And so we have now in southern New England, we have a revival of our traditions that is taking place. And the nucleus of that revival is in my wife's hometown of Mashpee, Massachusetts on Cape Cod, a home of the largest concentration of descendants of the Wampanoag people who met the Pilgrims. And what I have seen in the perception I've developed of the prophecies in meeting different spiritual leaders who have shared them with me is that they all are in agreement, no matter which part of the land that they come from, North and South America. They all are consistent in acknowledging that this is the time for Native people, Indigenous people, of major change, a time for that legacy of injustice and legacy of privilege to balance out to what it should be, so that the things that have been wrong, the injustices that we have faced, will all be dealt with in the way that they should. And our rightful place here in this hemisphere, our strength and our power that's been taken away from us, will return. And when I come here and meet my brothers and sisters from all over this hemisphere, I am energized by that reality, because the strength of those prophecies, I feel it here in all of the words in each of the delegates. And my first, I guess, knowledge of the prophecies of North America, which come from the first people on this continent who were respected as the traditional leaders on this continent, that is the Hopi people, they speak of the day of purification. And I first learned of this in 1973, the year my youngest son was born. And since that time period, I've watched all of this come to pass, all those things that were mentioned in the prophecies, the talk about how the crops wouldn't grow, how the weather patterns would go into extremes. And I purchased a VCR a few years ago. And whenever anything like that comes on the news, and I am a news addict, I plug in my tape, and when I label that coverage, it's always labeled prophecy. It's not labeled the event in the specific location where it took place. So as I see the fires in California, as I see the floods in other parts of the country, as I see the hurricanes on the East Coast, which the weathermen have said will be the worst that we've had in this decade, as far as even the recorded history of hurricanes, they said that the hurricanes we're having now are the worst that ever have been. So all of these things just document so completely all of the prophecies. And I know that we have to get ready, we as indigenous people, to prepare and save ourselves. And because our prayers are always for all mankind, this desire to save all of the wonderful gifts that we've been blessed with by the Creator here in this world that He's given to us is something that all men have to participate in. Because when I talk about survival, I talk about our common survival. And these things are mandatory. They're not an option. Anyone who hears of these things doesn't have the choice of turning their back on there, because we all have children and grandchildren that will follow us. And we have to think in terms of those generations that will follow us. And that was always part of our tradition, to think of future generations. And this is what we continue to do. And when we come here in a gathering like this, and we have the opportunity to be strengthened by our brothers and sisters from the rest of this hemisphere, it's just a reminder, a solidification of that reality, that we have to think in terms of the young people. And to me, that was one of the central themes here. I heard people in a variety of languages, from a variety of tribes, basically saying that same thing, that we have to make our plans all in terms of our children, our future generations. We have to welcome them into our circles, even if it is a circle of elders, because we have something we can learn, each of us from the other. And a good teacher learns from his students. So the fact that we might have gray hair, or that we have been on this earth longer, doesn't mean that we are the exclusive recipients of the wisdom that the Creator has given. And the Creator will continue to bless us and give us the wisdom we need, because things are not right in this society. And that is the other thing that strengthens us as a people. In spite of all we have experienced, in spite of all the efforts to destroy us, that has been the source of our strength, our spirituality, which we will maintain, and we will continue to maintain that struggle for our survival, because we know that is part of the Creator's plan. And all of man's problems come, in the words of an elder of my own family, come from going against the laws of nature and of nature's God.